And I'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Raji Sar, who is the Education Director for the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. That's the capacity in which I've come to know him. We have been working on well, actually, they've been doing recently the heavy lifting on the pedagogy section of ArcNet, and some really fantastic resources there. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those. He's an emeritus professor of cultural policy studies from the American University of Paris. He's founding co-editor of Cultures and Globalization. That's a series from SAGE in London. Lead writer for the United Nations Creative Economy Report. Team leader for the EU Inquiry, Culture, and EU External Relations. And editor of UNESCO's 2015 and 2018 reports, Reshaping Cultural Policies. And he was at UNESCO from 1973 to 2003, where he was executive secretary of the World Commission on Culture and Development, and is also a past president of Culture Action Europe. So he has clearly a great deal of expertise in cultural heritage preservation. And so we thought he would be a very good speaker to frame our discussion and get us started. So I will stop sharing and over to you. Where is the share?
Thank you very much, Michael. That was an overlong presentation. Doesn't matter. I'm really so pleased to be with you. I haven't been in an African setting for many years, and of course, it would have been wonderful if this could have been a physical African setting in Lagos or somewhere else in West Africa. But I'm very happy to be in the digital mode with you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to share my presentation. And I'll start by saying that having done a little bit of homework about your project, excellent project. It's great that you're doing this, all of you across West Africa and probably in other parts of Africa. And so in relation to what you're doing, I have a slightly different title, which is Cultural Heritage, the Built Environment and Cultural Learning. And as Michael has mentioned, I now run a new education program for the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, which is based in Geneva. I live actually in Lisbon, and so I'm in Lisbon right now, the same time zone as West Africa. And my job with the education program is to spread the message, to share the philosophy and the values that underpin the work of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture in relation to the built heritage and architecture. And those values are very similar indeed to the values that you hold. So what I'm going to do is to start by sharing with you a few key statements made by the founder of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, His Highness the Aga Khan, where he has responded to questions of journalists asking him, but why have you been so interested in the built environment, in architecture? And so this is this first foundational vision that I just leave you to digest. I'm not going to repeat what you can see on the screen. A second one is a gloss, if you like, on the first one. And it has to do essentially with an environmental responsibility, a sense of sustainability, leaving the world a better place, and trying to build values into environments, buildings, and contexts which make the quality of life better for future generations. So that is why the quality of life figures also in my title. And the third vision that I wanted to share with you has to do with the very deeply held belief on the part of His Highness that all of the developmental work that he does is not simply for his own community, the Ismaili community, but it is for literally everybody. And I bolded the words, not only for the Ismaili community, but also for those with whom they share their lives. And that slide ends on a surah of the Holy Quran, from which inspires His Highness to take this universalist position. What I have here is just a couple of slides that encapsulate what I believe, having worked at UNESCO in the World Heritage Program, in the Division of Cultural Heritage of UNESCO for many years. And these two slides that have to do with cultural heritage as enabler and as driver kind of summarize a set of beliefs that so many of us share, and that are shared also by the Aga Khan Trust for Culture in everything that it does. And so here are three reasons why, in the context of development, culture is so important. And I'll go to the next one, cultural heritage as a driver, which obviously has to do with the more utilitarian side of things. But it's not just utilitarian, because it is also the impacts of heritage conservation in its many forms. And what I wanted to do in relation to today was share with you, for what it's worth, and you are all people active, many of you are active in this field, so maybe what I am saying here is something that you know very well already, and it's certainly something that you must be practicing already. But I've been very concerned for many years, working across the Global South in particular, and facing this situation that we really don't have a good grasp of our cultural pasts. And we are not really able to make enough meaningful connections. We've come out of a period in which everything from the past was considered to be a drag on development, something negative. We've gone into a phase in which everything from the past is by nature positive, which is fine. It isn't necessarily the case, but it's all right to believe that, but then we should be able to make those connections. And particularly in relation to heritage conservation and safeguard, there is always the risk of doing piecemeal work, because we don't have a correct reading of how a particular building or a particular set of buildings fit into a particular style of building, a stylistic family, as it were. And we also don't have enough understanding of context. And so it seems to me that this is where there is a sort of task of public education that faces all those like yourselves who do documentation of heritage. I'm going to conclude with my spoken presentation with a couple of slides that illustrate how two of the flagship programs of the Trust, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture and the Aga Khan Historic Cities Program, embody the principles and values that I've set out already. As many of you must know already, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, which began in 1980, was established to recognize architectural excellence, to encourage architects, clients, and users, all three of them, architects, clients, and users, to learn from their architectural heritage and create the heritage of the future, as it were, to set new standards of building that address the needs and aspirations of their societies. And I should say that in the early years of the award, there was a very great emphasis on the connection between the built heritage and how we build today. If you go back to the first cycle in 1980, the second cycle in 1983, many of the buildings that were recognized by the award really engaged with heritage. That emphasis has been mitigated over the years. Many other concerns have come in. But the point of departure really was, and it's a point of departure that I think is still with us, that the founder, His Highness the Aga Khan, was so concerned to see that architects across the global south, and particularly in the Muslim world, were ignoring their own architectural heritage completely. And so that connection between how our forefathers built and how we can build today, the connection, the dialectic between the inherited and the invented, that was something that has been an abiding purpose of the award. And so the purpose of the award is to examine, analyze, and understand the dynamic of physical change and seek to influence it in a positive way so that future generations are able to live in better environments. And so this is a second slide on the award, and the way in which it recognizes not just architects, but also municipalities, builders, clients, master artisans, and engineers. And that is certainly the case of award projects in Africa that, of course, I don't have time to enter into today, and that's not the purpose of this discussion. But if you do have the time to go into the website of the Trust, the web page of the award, you will see what I'm saying. And the last point on this slide is that the documentation that the award itself has accumulated over the years, over 9,000 building projects. This documentation is now a rich resource for teaching and learning about how architecture is assessed and evaluated in our time. And I move now to the Historic Cities program, which was developed a good decade later, where you started off with a program that the award that was devoted to recognizing the work of architects and builders all over the world. Then across different sites in the Muslim world, the Trust began to invest in actual conservation projects. The earliest conservation projects were in Cairo, in Islamic Cairo, but there have been projects for the mosques of Timbuktu, Mopti, and Jenne, Stone Town in Zanzibar, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in India, in Malaysia, in Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan. So the program of the Historic Cities, the Historic Cities Preservation Program is now spread in all of those different settings across the world. And right from the start, this program has been an approach, has embodied an approach to historic conservation that is highly oriented towards the social. That is, it's oriented not just to be about bricks and mortars alone, but also about social, economic, and cultural development. Whoops. As I'm speaking to you, I realize that I'm actually using a PowerPoint which isn't the final one that I intended to use, but fortunately, when I made the final cut, I remember some of the things that I changed. So I'm not too upset by the mistake. I just used the wrong one. And so what I'll do is I'll now continue. The second purpose is really improving the quality of life of the people who inhabit these historic areas and promote models that sustain these improvements. And then the third specificity of the work of the Historic Cities program is to create in a holistic way a critical mass of programs that actually can only exist because there's the core work of heritage conservation. But these are programs that have to do with the quality of life that go well beyond just the bricks and mortars, just the buildings themselves. And so having said that, I've reached the end of this presentation. And so I'm going to ask Michael now to share with you a 9-minute film which is based on the Aga Khan Historic Cities project in New Delhi in India. And the film will speak for itself. I would have liked to be able to use a film that showed the work in an African setting, that might have been Zanzibar, or Timbuktu, or Mopti, or Djenné, but no such film is available. And so I thought that this film that's going to be shared with you now was the next best thing. And so now I will end and hand over to you, Michael, for the film. And if there are questions, once the film has been shown, I'm here to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Basti Hazrat Nizamuddin. Home to winding narrow streets. Walls that look down on hundreds of years of history. And steps that follow where a revered saint once walked. This is the living, beating heart of Delhi, the national capital of India.
हज़रत निज़ामुद्दीन औलिया का नाम आते ही एक लोगों के जहन में एक कम्युनल हार्मनी, एक गंगा जमनी तहजीब का नाम एकदम छड़ जाता है लोगों के जहन में.
This living example of India's pluralist culture and heritage is a natural home for the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, whose focus is always the physical, social, cultural, and economic revitalization of communities in the developing world. Revitalizing the Basti achieves multiple purposes. The preservation of both tangible and intangible manifestations of the past. The catalyzing of the residents' sense of ownership. The resultant creation of springboards for development. And a direct increase in the socio-economic activities, leading to a material increase in the quality of the lives of the residents.
Conservation done over here is actually coupled with development, so it's not, it's meant to ensure that everybody has a stake in it.
To begin with, the AKTC began to work with and in the community for the conservation of several of the monuments here. Slowly but surely, the glory of several key monuments among the hundreds that dot the landscape of the Basti began to be restored. Restoring these glorious representations of the past and living history has a relatable effect on how residents living in their vicinity begin to see and feel about themselves. Slowly, they begin to appreciate the value of their 700-year-old inheritance, encased as it is in the built-up and lived Indian history and culture. For this is the birthplace of the Qawwali and the final resting place of Khusro, Ghalib and Rahim, shining jewels in the Indian crown. Preserving the built heritage of the place has helped create interest in tourists and lovers of history. And today, residents can share the past with them, employing the training they received from the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. The program is called Sair-e Nizamuddin.
We have trained about 60 professionals, those who are actually working as heritage volunteers now. After preservation of all these monuments, people are really getting to know what culture they had from last 700 years, which was lost somewhere in between.
My work primarily focuses on the heritage walks that we conduct. We conduct heritage walk of Basti Hazrat Nizamuddin, of Humayun's tomb, and Abdul Rahim Khan Khan's tomb.
The direct connection between the restoration work and tangible benefits to the community is not lost on the residents. They can see how the investment in culture and heritage they inherited creates value for them in the present. As a result, they become more receptive to the new avenues for progress and social change the AKTC opens for them.
लगभग 7% महिलाएं केवल ऐसी थी जिनके पास अपने कोई आमदनी थी, यानी कि बस्ती की 93% महिलाएं ऐसे हैं जिनके पास अपनी कोई आमदनी नहीं है। जब इनके पास आमदनी नहीं है तो जाहिर सी बात है आज़ादी भी नहीं है।
Things are different now. Even among the women coming from traditionally conservative families, there is a realization that they have a capacity to contribute to the family and the community. This increased confidence has helped the SHG set up businesses, which help them increase their incomes and helps reclaim arts that were dying out. For instance, Zaika, which resurrects Basti cooking from the days of yore, bringing it into the present day.
जायका फर्स्ट न्यूट्रिशियस स्नैक्स बनाता है, सेकंड चिकन बिरयानी कोरमा वगैरह जो स्पेशल निजामुद्दीन स्पेशल होता है वो बनाता है।
Or Insha-e-Noor, where women train in the art of paper cutting called Sanji, or learn expert needlework called Zardozi. In the Sanji work the women undertake, we can see the visible echoes of motifs and patterns from the buildings restored by the AKTC.
इंशा-ए-नूर में हमारे 100 मेंबर हैं। बहुत मज़ा आता है घर से बाहर निकलकर, थोड़ी हमारे अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस भी आ गया, तेजी भी आ गई है।
This energy, so wonderfully expressed in the words Shaheen used, best finds expression during the Apni Basti Mela, held every November, when visitors can experience the proud heritage and culture of the Basti through activities, music, food, and more.
This Mela gives the people of the Basti an opportunity to showcase their talent, to showcase their vibrant culture.
ये सिर्फ कॉन्सेप्ट यही है कि बस्ती के लोगों को, उनके लाइवलीहुड को, उनके आर्ट एंड क्राफ्ट को बढ़ावा देना।
लेडीज सब बाहर निकली हैं, उन्होंने अपनी अपनी शॉपें लगाई हैं, उनको अच्छी इनकम हुई है। अपनी बस्ती मेला में भी बहुत लोग आए, सबने खाया और बहुत खुशी होती है उस टाइम पे।
We've got 15-20,000 people from outside coming in for a 3-day event. I think that culture has the potential to break class, religion divides like nothing else, and that's what we're trying to achieve here.
All right, thank you very much. Any quick questions or comments on that? I found it a very interesting view of how a place and a site and architecture becomes this catalyst for not just economic development, but also a flourishing of culture and an expansion of cultural activity. I think we see that that's the case often, and particularly it seems very vibrant in this case.
I see Mohammed Mekdad as raising his hand with a question.
Okay, go ahead, Mohammed.
Thanks, Pat, for bringing my raised hand to attention. It's really, it's really fascinating projects. Thanks, Raj, for the presentation, and really it reflects a lot of issues that are now very present in the discussions about the relationship between heritage communities and the developments of the developments, economic developments in these societies. I have actually a questions about two issues. Like the first one, how you deal with the issues of monitoring and evaluations of these projects on the short term, mid term, long term, and the second one, how you deal with the sustainability of these projects.
Well, those are two excellent questions. I'm not sure I heard completely well the first one. The second one, which is sustainability, is that the trust is not in any of these areas, in any of these places forever. And so it is very important for the trust to have a legacy plan put in place and to think about what will happen when the trust itself is not supplying money, expertise, and so on and so forth. And sometimes even the best laid plans can go awry. This happened in Cairo after the project in Darb al-Ahmar was more or less complete. Nobody expected the Arab revolutions, the Arab Spring, to occur in 2011. And because of what ensued as a result, very few of the plans that were made could be actually implemented in the way they were supposed to be. So the best we can do, and this is something that the chairman of the trust, His Highness, insists on very, very frequently, is how well are we doing our legacy planning in view of sustainability. I think your first question, if I understood correct, had to do with evaluation, and there is regular and inbuilt evaluation in the system in the way that the whole AKDN, the Aga Khan Development Network, operates. And what I'm going to do, perhaps with your permission, if I could just share the screen and share with you the PowerPoint that I should have shared with you, but which I just used the wrong one. It's a long story. This slide shows you the broad context in which all of this work is located. There are basically three pillars of the AKDN, which is in fact the largest private network, developmental network in the world. It employs over 80,000 people. And it has three pillars: economic development, social development, and cultural development. And the cultural development pillar is what the Aga Khan Trust does. And it's a very small pillar compared to the others. And for example, the pillars work with each other. They're not silos. For example, much of the work in Delhi is done, in fact, by agents of the Aga Khan Foundation, because the expertise in the trust is architectural conservation. It's not education, it's not health, it's not women's empowerment. And so what you see happening in this network, in this system, is a lot of cross-fertilization between domains. And so I'll exit the slideshow here. That was a way in which I wanted to answer your question and say that there are protocols, evaluation protocols, that are very strict, that are followed by all the AKDN organizations.
Any other questions? If not, we can keep this moving pretty quickly and move on to our next speaker. Any questions? I can't see any hands, so. All right, well, thank you so much for that. And I'll turn it over, Baba, to you if you want to do the next.
Oh, wait, Michael, we do have
yeah.
a raised hand.
Oh, okay, yes. Who is
Hama
it?
Edo.
Yes, go ahead, Hama.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation and for sharing the video. My question has to do with what kinds of, I'd love to hear a bit more about what kinds of measures are put in place to avoid or to support kind of these community agents, such as the women who were featured in the video, who are, you know, going through these different training programs and who are now working and so on. How to, because often what happens is that I think these people can become sort of locked into their role as stewards of conservation and heritage, where also that at the same time that you have economic development, which is bringing, you know, resources that they obviously need and value, there's also this kind of locking into this position. So I'm curious about how the trust sort of reconciles these two aspects so that there's both increase or improvement in people's social, economic conditions and the possibility of continuing, I don't know, like expansion in some form in like their sense of self in the world or their sense of mobility beyond just sort of earning more money. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's a very good question, and it is not just a question of earning more money. Had I been able to go into more detail, I could have shared with you a certain number of human stories of people who belong to the Basti in this case in Delhi, or people who worked in Cairo in the Darb al-Amhar project, or people who worked on the mosques in Mali. And to varying degrees, all of these people have been given opportunities to survive at a given moment, but also to broaden their professional profiles. So you have somebody who's worked as an accountant and was trained as an accountant. I'm thinking of a lady called Hamida in Cairo. She didn't stay with the AKTC project. She couldn't because the project ended before the Arab Spring. But because of her experience in the AKTC project, she was able to land herself an extremely good job in a level of social and economic success that her family could not have dreamed of. And so what we're seeing happening is in all of the AKTC projects, people being empowered to go beyond themselves and to acquire professional skills. That's the key thing. They are being empowered themselves to be able to leave the project when they want to and go and work somewhere else.